Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul Perdue, and I am a nerd, and we are 7 minutes late. I'm going to blame Mary Jo. You know how it is when a man and a wife, not that we're married, go out to dinner. The man's always ready 10 minutes before it's time to leave. The woman's always ready 7, maybe 8 minutes after it's time to leave. Okay, I know I'm going to get in trouble for saying that. We had some technical difficulties. Mary Jo will be joining us in just a moment. She can't hear me. That's how I'm able to say this. Now, before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping. This represents something that you have on your screen. Hopefully it looks very much like what you have. It should be over on the right. It has a little box jutting off to the left with some arrows and some icons. These arrows in this top icon point to the right because the box is expanded. If you click that, the box will go away, and these arrows will switch over and move everything else out of the way, and they'll change to pointing to the left. When you click them when they're pointing to the left, the box comes back into view. By getting it out of view, by clicking when it's pointing to the right and getting rid of this big box, you should be able to see what's behind it. You may want to bring it back into view so that you can type a question here. If you are shy and want to ask a question and don't want to be unmuted and talk live, then you can type a question here and we'll see it, we'll watch for it, and when the time comes, we'll answer your question, make sure we get it answered, and then move on. If you are not shy and instead would like to ask a question by raising your hand, this little icon looks like a hand and has an arrow that points upwards as if it were a hand being raised. And that hand being raised can cause you to be noticed by us. We will unmute you, let you ask your question, and you will then be able to get the answer to your question. We'll make sure we get it answered, and then we'll mute you back up. With that said, I'm going to start by minimizing this, by moving this thing that you can't see out of the way. And we're going to talk about version 16 of PracticeMaster and Tabs. Now, I notice that Kelly has her hand up. I don't know if she's being a troublemaker or if she really has a question. Now, Kelly, however, does not have, I've sent you your audio pin, Kelly. If you want to plug that into the phone, that will allow me to unmute you. But right now you have your hand up. I've actually just put it down, and yet I can't unmute you. So if you do have a question to ask, Kelly, and you can't get the phone to react, go ahead and type it in. Otherwise, I put your hand down, and we'll assume that you were just kind of waving at somebody. We're going to talk about PracticeMaster and Tabs version 16. And we said, or I said in my email, that we would be telling you everything you wanted to know about Tabs 3 and PracticeMaster version 16 in this session. We lied. As we were getting ready for this, we realized there is no possible way that we could cover everything that's in version 16 today. So we're going to talk about the new organization of contacts, and we are going to talk about how Exchange integrates now with version 16 and how that's different from what you're used to now in version 15.3 or earlier. And we are going to talk about emailing statements. And then in future virtual user group meetings, we're going to talk about other features. And there are a lot of other features. But these are some of the biggies. So I'm going to start by talking about contacts and how they've changed. Now, we're used to something in PracticeMaster called related parties. And related parties are a way for us to have people that come in contact with a case be stored and related to that matter, related to that case. They may be attorneys, they may be judges, medical providers, adjusters, real estate agents, all sorts of different types of people. Judges, courts, anything that can come into contact with more than one case should be a related party. In fact, my theory is that anything, whether it even comes into contact with more than one case or just comes into contact with one case, should still be a related party, should still be a contact and tied to the case that way. The reasoning is that when everybody is a related party and they are related to cases, you can see the relationships between people and cases. The problem with the old way of doing it was that the one thing in PracticeMaster prior versions that was not a related party was the client themselves. And the client themselves really should be a related party. In other words, you might not even know this person that you've just met that is the opposing attorney on a certain case is going to someday be a client, but he may be. So he goes into the related party file and he becomes the opposing attorney on that case, and later on he becomes a client of yours. He comes to you for whatever. There's no conflict because of the difference between the two types of law, what you were opposing him on and what you're representing him on now. There's no conflict to you. You take him on as a client. Now you have to re-enter all of his information. That's been turned around on its ear in version 16, and it is really quite phenomenal. There are certain changes that have been made to the contact file itself to allow you to say that these 16 people are all members of this organization. And then there are ways for you to say this is the client in this matter, and this is the contact in this matter, and point back to the contact file. And point back to the contact file. You might notice that I stopped calling it related parties and started calling it the contact file. The very first thing you'll realize is that this is now called the contact file, not the related parties file. And if I pull this file up and go ahead and tell it I want to add a new contact, I'm going to add I was going to add Purdue Law Offices, but they're in there. It's my brother. I'm going to add Mystery Machine Incorporated. This goes along with our sample client, Scooby-Doo. And when I add this particular client, I'm going to add them as an organization, and I'm going to put their address in as 1800 Denison, Dundee, Michigan, 48131. Wow, that's kind of different, isn't it? Let's click here. These are the details. His PracticeMaster has parsed them, if you will. That's a nerd term, but it's a term that applies nonetheless. PracticeMaster has realized that this is the street address, this is the city, this is the state, and this is the zip. But it's allowing us to store it in this block form. Neat for a number of reasons. It's an accessible field that we can use in document coding. It's a blockable field, so we can click right here and copy this and paste it into a Word document. And instead of having to make 4 copies to copy this address, copying the address and then the city and then the state and then the zip, we now can make just 1. Now, what's this over here? Business, home, or other. If I click home, I have a different place to put the home address. If I go back to business, I go back to that address. If I say that the home address for this person is 123 Main Street, and that's in Petersburg, Michigan, and I don't know their zip code, so we'll make one up. I now have 2 addresses stored in 2 separate locations, both accessible, but now I can say that the home is the default address. Okay, this is huge. If you remember back to PracticeMaster version 15.3 or earlier, you did have 3 places to put addresses, but one of them was always the primary address. So you might say, well, this is where we're going to put the company address, and this is where we're going to put the home address, and this is where we're going to put the cottage address or whatever. Well, the problem with that is if the cottage address is where you're primarily supposed to contact this person, you had no way of saying that. Now you do. You have 3 distinct places to put addresses, and you have the ability to take any of those 3 distinct places and say that they are the default address. Now let's go put the phone number in for Mystery Machine Incorporated. It's a toll-free number. Okay, and their fax number is toll-free also. Okay. There is no home or mobile address for Mystery Machine Incorporated. There will be in a minute when we add the 2 people that belong to this organization. But what's this? Anybody recognize these? These are the same, I believe 17, don't quote me on that, phone numbers that you can configure in Outlook. Okay. Now what we've got here is 4 places on the screen to put phone numbers, but we have the ability to store 17 different phone numbers per contact. Okay? Think about that for a second. Let's say that we put in, well, we did. We put in a business phone and we put in a fax phone. Now, this is a beta version, so, and it's, there we go, business fax. Notice how when I changed this to business fax, this one switched to business and the two numbers flip-flopped. We don't have 4 places to put numbers. We actually have 17. We just show 4 of them at a time. Each contact can actually have 17 different phone numbers. Of course, they have to match with these: primary, radio, telex, TTY, home to, home fax, company. There's one in here called primary. That's where I'm putting all my direct dial phone numbers that I come across for people. Okay, that's kind of cool. Now watch this. This is the main email address for Mystery Machine Incorporated. But you'll notice that I have places for 3 email addresses. Not only for the organization, but also for each of the individual people within the organization. So again, I can have a friend, Brad Johnson, who works at Mystery Machine Incorporated, and I may have his brad.johnson at mmi.com email address stored under email 1. But I also may have his brad.johnson at yahoo.com personal email address stored under email 2, and be able to switch between them, see them, use them, specify them in certain locations, in certain reports, in certain documents. Okay. This is kind of cool. This user group field that we now have, anybody that's syncing with Outlook and then going to their phone knows how hard it is now to do that in a big firm. Because your iPhones, even those wonderful iPhones or those Android phones that have all that gigabyte of storage, they still have limitations on how many contacts they can hold. Well, in version 16, you can say what group or user, we're tying straight to the user box here, has access to this particular contact. On a contact-by-contact basis, we can say where these go. So if this particular contact is supposed to go to Mary Jo and Barb and Paul, that's what we've done. We've identified Mary Jo Blum, Paul Perdue, and Barb Perdue as the people whose phones will sync with this particular contact. Now, I'm already running out of time, and I've only touched on certain things here, so I'm going to actually skip out of here now. I'm going to save this record. I'm going to go back over here to list, and I'm going to add a new contact. And I'm going to add Scooby-Doo, although I think we already might have him. Shaggy, I don't know Shaggy's last name. We're going to call him Shaggy Perdue. Perdue, comma, Shaggy. And we're going to add him as an individual. And when I start to type in organization, M-Y-S-T-E-R, bam, look at that. It's treating this organization like a record that we're linking to, because we are. I'm going to go ahead and hit Tab, and look at that. There's the business information, the business address. Notice we did not pull the home address from the organization, because Shaggy Perdue is going to have a separate organization home address. Okay, he happens to live at 321 Plum Lane in Dundee. I hit Tab. I'm old, and that's what I do. And it told me a city, state, and zip could not be determined. And it takes me in here and lets me fill them in. Basically, if you don't put what we call a fully qualified address in here, it'll tell you, and it'll take you to the details screen and let you figure out what happened. If I were to put in something like 4813 and forget the 1, it's not going to let me out without saying, hey, something's wrong. And here, when it said something's wrong, it thought this might be the second address line. So put it up there. I'm going to go back here, put in that. Okay. Now, I'm going to very quickly say that his home address is 456-7890. I'm sorry, home phone number. And I've already said his home address was whatever. And now I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to also add, I'm terrible at thinking up sample data on the fly here. We're going to just say Smith, Dr. James. Okay, anybody know who Dr. Smith is? That's back from Warning Will Robinson, the Lost in Space. He has now joined the Mystery Machine Incorporated team. So when we put Mystery Machine in again, bam, his home number is oops. I know home numbers can't begin with 0, but work with me here. Now, we have 3 records. We have Dr. Smith, we have Shaggy Purdue, and we have the organization Mystery Machine. I'm going to sort by organization, and what we end up with is seeing all the people that are tied there. One is actually the organization record for Mystery Machine. These 2 people work there. Now, I'm going to pull up Shaggy Purdue. I'm going to pull up the business address. They moved to 1801 Denison. It's right across the street. Lovely building. When I press S, Control S to save it, it says you've changed the business information for an individual contact. Do you want to also change it for the organization? I say yes, and I pull that up, and I can change it there. Now, if I had changed it instead for the organization, like I'm doing here, then it goes out and says, well, you have this many people that are contacts with this organization that don't have that 1801 Denison address. They have a different one. Do you want to change it? So the point is, if you're going to change an organization's address, the best place to do it is right here in the organization record, because then it will filter that business address. We're going to change it now to 1700. It will filter that back out to the individual contacts. If you change the business address for an individual contact, it will take you to the organization's record, but you'll have to make the change yourself, and then it's going to filter it back out to the individuals. It's really a lot of synergy that's going on here. Now, the synergy used to be between the matters and the contacts. Now the synergy is between the contacts and themselves. Now we have individuals within organizations, okay? I'm going to go back here, now that I've looked at that, now that I've explained it and shown you, and I'm merely going to point out, because we'll talk about this more at the next user group meeting, that now when you go to set up a client, you point to an existing contact. And when you set up a contact within a matter, you point to an existing contact. Now, this is not the best example. We should have changed this, Mary Jo. This is left over from conversion. Let's say that the contact for this is actually Dr. Smith. So now we have a situation. Oops. Hold on one second. Come on, let me out of here. Let's say it's Purdue Shaggy. There we go. Now we have a situation where we have a contact and a company. The company is the client. The individual person that works at that company is the contact. Think about this from an insurance defense perspective. You have an insurance defense firm. That insurance defense firm has an insurance company as a client. They have literally hundreds of open active matters for that client. That client has 8 offices. That client has 42 adjusters. In the old tabs, it was a mess. The old tabs was written under the premise that you had one address for a client, and if you changed that .0000 record, it would say, do you want to change this for all matters? Well, that works for some of our clients, who have single location clients of their own. But when you have an insurance company with 8 offices and 48 different adjusters working on your current active matters, that doesn't work. You want to change one of those addresses or change one of those contacts in an insurance defense firm with version 15.3 or earlier, and it's a mess. This pulls it together. Now, I know that this is probably clear as mud, but I'm still going to go ahead and turn this over to Mary Jo, who's going to talk about email statements, because I can't possibly begin to explain absolutely everything that's going on here, and we're going to talk more about this relationship between the client and the contact for a matter and the actual contact file in another virtual user group meeting. But this new contact-oriented approach to organizing things is one of the major differences between version 15.3 and version 16. Now, Mary Jo, are you there? Can you hear me?
I am here.
Good, okay. We were teasing you before about a woman always
I'm sure when I can't hear you always
minutes.
do.
Yeah. In fact, I qualified it. I said that she can't hear this, and that's why I'm allowed to say it. Mary Jo is going to switch over, and I'm going to real quickly look. There are no hands raised. There are no questions. So, Mary Jo, it's all yours to talk about emailing statements.
Okay. The first thing, while we're still on the screen, Paul had showed you that there is an email field here that you're going to be putting in for the contact. This email field with the asterisk, email number 1, is where the statements will be emailed to. So when you're setting up your clients and you want to email statements to them, you want to make sure that this email number 1 is set for the default of where those statements will be sent. You can add email 2 and 3 as well, but the one that is designated with the asterisk is where the statement will be sent. And you have to change it here in the contact record. You can't over on the screen that we're going to go to. But so I just want to make that clear. It'll be grayed out on the other screen. This is where it needs to be changed in the actual contact record.
But let me clarify.
Now,
we're not actually on the contact record, and it is grayed out here.
Okay.
I was on the contact record before.
Yeah. So you'll need to be in there, and I need to get into tabs. So let's get there. So when you're in the actual client in tabs, and you're down here on the contact, you'll have to actually bring up a client first. You'll have to go ahead and click on the contact, put your email number 1 address in there, and save it in the contact record, and that's where the email will go. Once you've got that done, we can go to our billing preferences, and then you'll notice we've got a little bit of a different screen down here for our statement delivery options. So when we come in here, you can either mail the statement, or you can email the statement, or you can do both. So you would come in here to edit. We're going to edit our delivery options, and you'll get this new window here. You can say that you either want to mail the statement, email the statement, or like I said, you're going to check which combination or one or the other. If we're emailing, you can see it's got the email number 1 down here, and that was the one I told you need to set back on the contact field. So this is where it will be emailing. You can include on the attention line, you can set up some different things here if you want to include their name or other on the attention line of the statement. You can do that, or you can just leave it be the default. So once you've got this, there's also a template selection down here. You can set up, just like you have your statement design templates and how different statements look, you can also set up different email templates. Maybe you want a certain email to certain clients to say one thing, but other ones you want to say something different. So you can set up multiple email templates as to how they're going to look. And you would choose that for the client then. Just like you have a statement template, you would choose an email template for each individual client. It matters however you want to do that. Once you've done that, you'll go ahead and say OK, and you've just set up your email statement. There's also a section in system configuration where you will need to set up where your server is for email and things like that. And we're not going to go into that today, but there's some settings to set over there so that you have the ability to email your statements. Once you've done that, you're going to bill as you normally would. You're going to go ahead and create your statements. You're going to final bill them. Now, as long as you final build it, you will have the opportunity to view the statements before you email them. And it will give you an opportunity to update the statement in that window, or you can go ahead and final bill and update all your statements like you normally would. And then you will see in the Statement tab, you've got a new Email Statements icon. And we've created, before we started, one final bill that's updated and one that's not. So if I come in here and click on my email statements, I'll see my list. And here I've got my updated statement that I've done for Scooby-Doo, and I've got my one that says to be updated. So you have to create a final bill before anything shows up in here. But once you do, you'll have some that can be updated or some that are already updated. So if I wanted to go ahead and I want to take a look at my updated statement here before I email it, I can go into the View Edit Email. And here is what it's going to look like. I've got my subject line, we put it in that we wanted it to be our statement date on our template, and I'll show you where you can design the templates here in just a minute. We've got attached, you'll find your current statement. Thanks. And we've got our language in here. You can go ahead and put whatever you need to down at the bottom. And you also have the ability to attach documents, actually it's attaching the statement as a PDF. If I wanted to add additional language in here real quick, I'm in the edit window, so maybe I wanted a personal message to this particular client. I could go ahead and quickly change and add a few lines to this one. and it's ready to go. Once it's there, I can go ahead and I can say that it's ready to send. Or, you can save it and you can send them all at once. So that's where you can kind of go in and you can take a look at what you've created. If I were to go into my to be updated, this is one I've created the final bill for, and I want to send it, I can go ahead and I can mark that it's reviewed and it's ready to send. And if I say that it's, I want to send this email, it's going to pop up a box and it's going to tell me, are you sure you want to email the statement? Yes. But then it's going to say that this needs to be updated first. The statement attached to the email you're previewing needs to be updated before it can be sent. Would you like to update it now? So if you have final bills out there that you haven't updated, they're showing up on the list and you need to, you can just do it here. So if you're doing individual emails one at a time, whatever you're doing, or if you're doing them all in a batch, you can review them, you can send them, and you can update all at once. I'm going to just say no. I'm going to get out of there. Once you've marked them that they're reviewed, it's just like if you're using pre-bill tracking, you're going to have the same thing. You're going to have the hold and the review buttons. So if there's a statement you want to hold, you're going to go ahead and just click that. If you want to review, those are the ones that will be sent. You can click and highlight just like you do in pre-bill tracking. You can hit shift and do them both, and you can hit reviewed for both. Once you're done, my little box here is in my way, and that's why I'm not seeing it. But once you've marked all of your statements that are reviewed and you're ready to send, you can click on the Send Reviewed Emails, and it will go ahead out and it will send your emails for you. So you've got that opportunity, just like in pre-bill tracking, to go ahead and modify the email. You can't modify the statement here, but you can modify the email language, and then you can mark it reviewed and send them all in a batch all at once. To design your template, I'm going to come out here and show you where that is. And it will print a list of all the emails that you've sent out there too. If we go to our statement setup, there is also now an email template icon. So it's the same place you go in to create your statement templates, but now you can do emails. And when I come in here, I'm going to show you the general. Again, you just give it a name for whatever one that you want to create. But I'm going to go in, and we've got one that it comes with an example template, and I'll show you that one first. And if I click it, it kind of gives you, it walks you through what you can put in here. Basically, are you going to, enter the name from the sender, email? Do you want to carbon copy anybody? And then down here, you've got available fields that you can plug into your email that it will go back out into Tabs and pull that information. So if you want to say bill to full name, you can go ahead and just plug that field in. Your current statement dated, whatever, is attached. Whatever language you're using that you want to send out for your cover email, and then it will go ahead and attach the statement to whatever you set up here. And you can create as many templates here as you need to, and you can assign those to clients just like you do statement templates. Are there any questions on emails? I know I'm going very quickly, and like Paul said, again, we'll probably talk about some of these things again, but this is kind of where we're going for today. So any other questions on how to...
We're going to be talking about this for months and months to come.
Probably, you're right.
I don't see a question about email. Were you going to cover anything else, Mary Jo, on emailing?
No, I think that's, unless there's questions on that, okay. That's basically...
I do have one question on Exchange. We do integrate with Exchange 2010. That was the question. Will version 16 integrate with Exchange 2010? We didn't cover Exchange today. I may have hinted that I was going to, and then I got caught up in contacts. So we will talk about the Exchange integration next time. I can't tell who. Oh, it's Dick. Dick, if you want to email me specific questions about Exchange 2010, I can answer those ahead of the next virtual user group meeting. So any other questions? I think those are two of the major features. We've kind of covered emailing statements. We're not going to teach you everything there is to know about it, but just show you how it's available and how it can work. We've just begun to touch on how contacts affect the client relationship and how that will work. And when Mary Jo and I were preparing for this, we printed out the 10-page what's new beta list, because this software is still in beta, meaning that it's not released for general sale yet. And we got to page 2 and realized that we already had enough to cover. So there's a lot to cover in what's new in version 16, and we will continue to do that in following months. Somebody also asked, we have Groupwise email. Will version 16 work with that? It may. It will not be tested, and it will not be certified. Basically, with version 16, help me out here, Mary Jo. I think STI has basically dropped support both for Novell and for Groupwise.
I was thinking that was even with 15.
No, I think what they did is they warned everybody about a year ago that,
that was coming.
Version 16 would not be supported. Now, I think what that means is they're not testing, they're not providing direct support on any integration issues. Doesn't mean it's not going to work, but I'm not looking for the integration to be doing anything special. And frankly, I don't even know specifically whether or not it is due to do that. I think actually they've dropped all support for Novell in version 16 and also for Groupwise, which is a Novell product. So Nancy, if you want to email me offline, I can answer any other questions you have about that, or anybody else who has questions about Groupwise. My email address is paul.purdue, like the school, not the chicken, and that's P-U-R-D-U-E, paul.purdue@attorneycomputersystems.com. We do have web engineers working day and night to try and come up with a longer email address, but as of yet, they have not been able to do that. So it's paul.purdue@attorneycomputersystems.com. Somebody else asked, how will the conversion of related parties work going to new contacts? Well, all your existing related parties will convert pretty much flawlessly. The STI spent years writing the conversion routine, and we beta tested it. We worked with several firms that were beta testing along with us, and there are some things that we're going to show you, probably not in a virtual user group meeting. We might actually have a separate webinar about things to consider when you're considering converting to version 16. But it does a very nice job of matching up your clients and your contacts. But there are some things you can do ahead of time, because Dick, you asked this question. You asked it, how do your related parties convert to contacts? Well, that's the easy part. They just become contacts, and some of the new fields are now available. They can fill in those new fields that weren't available before. The hard part is converting your existing clients and your existing contacts in your client records to create the related parties, create the interdependencies and the interrelationships, and then link them properly to the client file. They did a very good job of it. They put a lot of thought into it. They put some stuff into it that makes it pretty much flawless out of the box. In other words, it'll convert, and it may not be perfect, but your bills will still come out the same way until you can clean up the things that they weren't able to convert properly. But as I said, we're probably going to have a whole separate webinar, probably longer than a half an hour, specifically on things to consider when you're converting to version 16. Because if you put the right amount of thought into it ahead of time and you understand what's happening, which we can provide you with that information because we've done a couple of them, if you put that pre-planning into it, it can go even smoother than it would without that. So, the version 16 release date, someone asked, when is it? Currently, they're shooting for February. Originally, we thought we were going to have it by the end of the year. I don't believe I know that's not going to happen. It's not that I don't believe it. I know that's not going to happen. They're actually still working on something called the Outlook connector, the Exchange connector for CSV, so there are certain things that aren't even done. They've actually taken advantage of the fact that the beta period was extended. They had twice as many beta users, beta testers, if you will, this time than the last time they did a beta test, and that's good and bad. It's great because they get very valuable feedback on how this really sucks and this could be better, and this is great, and they are able to make those changes before the general release software comes out. The problem with it is that they get a lot of people saying, this could be better, and this is great, and this could change, and therefore they have to devote resources to fixing the things that people point out. A lot of the things that they're changing aren't really fixes, but people saying, well, this would be better if it was done this way instead of this way. One thing that they've added at the last minute is something called the Matter Manager. They had some people that they could throw at this, and it's basically, instead of the Client Manager and PracticeMaster, we're going to have now the Matter Manager that's going to show chronologically everything journal records, emails, fees, tasks, calendar items, all in one chronological list so that you can see the entire chronology of the case without having to look at it in very specific granular detail, instead seeing everything pulled together. That's also going to pull a bunch of accounting information and billing information in, the accounts receivable, how it breaks down by aging, how it breaks down by fees and expenses, trust balances, client fund balances will now be viewable in this Matter Manager within PracticeMaster. So that's kind of neat that they're doing that there. Will the contact info in the current client file move over to the contacts file? Yes. The thing is that if you do have an insurance defense firm with one client with 8 different offices and 48 different adjusters, if you also have, for those 48 different adjusters, let's pick one of them, you have 6 different ways of saying his name, Bob Smith, Robert Smith, Dr. Robert Smith, Bobby Smith, and Bob Smith Jr. I know that's only 5, and I said 6, but I ran out of examples. You will, if you don't clean it up ahead of time, end up with 5 different contact records. If you have one office for this insurance company that has 8 different offices is in Toledo, Ohio on Monroe Street, and you have the address as 1800 Monroe, STREET in one record, and ST in another record, and ST period in the third, it's not going to create 3 matter records, but it's going to, or 3 contact records, but it's going to do some things to maintain that data the way it is. So cleaning things like that up, and we'll get into much more detail in the webinar that specifically addresses this, cleaning those things up can really help that conversion. Case matter info from the client file goes into a new file, and what about the custom fields that we've added to various files? Well, no, it doesn't go into a new file. And in fact, custom fields, everything will stay. If you've added fields to files in PracticeMaster, they'll still be there. In fact, they've taken great pains, even where the structure of data is changing, to try to maintain the field names. So if you've got documents coded, or you've got reports that you've generated or built that pull certain fields in, they're trying as hard as they can not to break those. Now, certain things do break. We had to change a few things in the documents we code. We had to change a few things in the filters we were running in PracticeMaster. And again, many of those things will be covered in the What to Look For webinar that will deal specifically with what to do with converting version 15.3 to version 16. Okay, no hands raised. I think we're done with questions. I don't see any more. Am I missing anything, Mary Jo? I do have one more question. A lot of times during editing bills, the attorneys move the entries around. Will there be any way to do that more easily in version 16? I'm not sure, Nancy, what you mean by move the entries around. If you
I'm assuming she means if they've entered them in a certain order and then they want to change that order around.
Yeah, nothing has changed as far as that goes, so far as I know. Can you think of anything, Mary Jo, that would affect that? I can't think of anything that would affect that. Yeah, right now I see somebody else has changed the date. And I think what Nancy may be saying is that you may have 10 entries for the same date, and you don't have any control over what order they come out in. And even if that's not what she's saying, I will say that that hasn't changed. Nothing's changed as far as how you order fee transactions on a statement. Okay. Very good. I think we're done. Again, any questions that you didn't ask or were too shy to ask or thought of later, paul.purdue@attorneycomputersystems.com, and we'll get them answered. So we will see everyone next year in the January virtual user group meeting that we affectionately call the water cooler, where we will again talk more about version 16, what's new, what's changing, and all those great things. Everybody have a great holiday, a great new year, and we'll see you in 2011. Thanks much. Bye-bye, everybody.